So it's important we understand a few of the key concepts before we leave, or we won't be able to effectively run the program. Those of you who are experts at this, either take a little snooze or get ready because we're going to have some dialogue time with each other. So I do have that question on reboot. So the reboot system is where we do a 4-step overcorrection procedure. What do we do?
A 4-step overcorrection procedure.
So this is restricting access to reinforcing experiences. If your classroom isn't reinforcing, if this procedure is the same as your classroom, it doesn't work because you don't have behavioral contrast. So in the reboot system, what you're doing is it's a disciplinary context when you've had that zero-out behavior. And the disciplinary consequence is task-based. Why is it task-based? Because task-based grounding has a high evidence base and time-based grounding doesn't. How many of you were ever grounded as a kid? You know, sent to your room and you couldn't come out for 2 weeks? What was the problem? Of course, you talked your way out of it. But what was the basis there? It was that you were going to be in a non-reinforcing place. But hey, bedrooms are not the same as they used to be. They are major entertainment centers. And kids can fly up into the sky with their cell phones. So task-based grounding is you can't get out of doing this task and get access to reinforcement until you complete these steps. The key here is behavioral contrast. So the first thing you want to set up in your system is an understanding of if you get one of these big egregious behaviors, where will the child de-escalate? Where will they get calm? And it's always useful to ask kids, if you were really highly agitated, where in our classroom would you like to be to get calm? And I've got a teacher down in Santa Barbara who has a man cave. All of the kids in his classroom are little boys. And the little boys named it the man cave. And what this is the space under his desk in which he's put up beads, you know, like beads that hang down, bead curtains. And there's a bead bag under there. And so when the child needs to de-escalate, they go into the man cave. However, some kids in his class don't like the man cave to de-escalate. They like to pace back and forth. So you identify with the kiddo where should they de-escalate. You could have a de-escalation area in your room. And remember, a kid who's agitated doesn't want other people looking at him. And so behind some kind of bookcase, there's a variety of different things you can do in the classroom to give a place you go when you've blown it and you just need to get calm. Because you can't go on to the other steps until they've gotten calm. So you get calm, and then they get the folders. You need 10 plastic folders, and label them 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you start by giving the student folder number 10 if the problem was a 10-folder event. If it was an 8-folder event, you would give them which folder?
8.
8, you got it. So we're kind of getting brain dead toward the end of the day, so I just wanted to check on that. In your first folder, you want to build behavioral momentum, which means you don't load it with a bunch of stuff. It might have only one sheet of paper with some math problems, or read this and answer the questions, draw a line from one thing to another. It has to be at skill fluency level for that child. In other words, they won't need assistance from an adult to complete it. Because if they needed assistance from an adult, you wouldn't be able to withhold reinforcement. So, and if the kid says, I can't do this, what do? You don't ignore them. You say, if you can't do this task, I'll make a substitute. But you're just doing the same level. So as a teacher, you're preparing levels. So you have perhaps 5 levels in reading, 5 levels in math, 5 levels in writing. It's relatively boring worksheets. But if your classroom is the worksheet program, there's no behavioral contrast. It's not going to work. And when I'm in folders, I have to get calm before I go into folders. And folders are in the reboot room or the boring room. And that's where you do your folders. This does not have a door on it. So if they want to walk out, what do? Walk out. And there will be kids who walk out. Right? They re-escalate on you. They're manipulating. But you hold with it because you're kind, fair, firm, and consistent. And if they need to get calm again, try to get them to go to the calming area. If they won't go to the calming area, leave them in the folder room and take out things that they could hurt themselves or you with. So don't have chairs that are weapons. So this is a weapon chair. Why? Metal pointy bottoms. If you're stuck with those, put tennis balls. And they actually sell them online. They suction cup on and basically prevent eyeballs from being poked out of chairs. But try to get chairs that have that circle of metal. You know what I mean? The circle of metal on it. Or you get the desk and the chair that are welded together. It's really hard to fill those. But the rule is they can't see or hear fun stuff happening in the environment because what you're doing is boring them. And you're applying boring condition as the consequence they will hate because you want it to develop a reputation. I better refrain from these big egregious behaviors because otherwise I'm going to get reboot and I hate reboot. And the classic story I tell is from Pasadena in the Focus Point Academy where there were 2 twins. They were about 15 years old and one of them had just earned honors outing. He's really proud. He had 17 out of 20 days. The last 7 have to be in a row. And he was thrilled. And then his twin called him something. Let's say it was stupid cuckoo head, but it was actually worse than that. And you could see the wheels going in this kid. And he went, oh, but he didn't do anything. And then finally he turned away. And I asked him later, hey, you usually go attack your brother. What happened? He said, well, I thought about it. I hate that reboot. I hate it. And I didn't want to lose out on going out. So that's why we say this is the wings of the air. This is what stabilizes the behavior so that you can do your specially designed instruction. So I start with behavioral momentum, just one item in that folder. And then as I get to the middle range, there may be more than one sheet in it. What they don't know is that this is really time-based. Because we figure out how long we really want them to be in this corrective procedure. If I knocked you to the floor and hit you hard, that's what violation? Unprovoked physical aggression. We also have provoked physical aggression. But I didn't call you a stupid cuckoo head. You just came and knocked me down unprovoked. It's a 10-folder event. But then there's other physical aggression that's a slight push. So you can vary how long the correction occurs by changing how much is in the folder. Does that make sense? So you stay with the condition that these are folders. If the kids ask you, let me see what's in those folders, what do you say? No. You get one folder at a time until you can show that you're a good student and ready to move into the next phase. We want to be able to print up our signage in vinyl. Why? Because it's hard to keep making all these posters. And when you have it in vinyl, it just becomes part of what's available signage. So in this, available for kids to see. So I've used words of get calm, do your folders, think about it, which is a debriefing form called thinking about my inappropriate behavior. Or for young children, we have younger versions. And that's where an adult, typically the teacher, but it can vary, sits with the student and says, now let's record what was the problem behavior you had, where was it, who was present, who was harmed by this, what was another choice you could have made, what choice did you make instead, what might you do next time. So it's a debrief about it. Normally, after a child has had a really big, egregious event, they're better than they've ever been before. Have you noticed this? Because they're worried about you and whether or not you're going to still care for them. So you go through the debrief process, and you can call it debrief, you can call it thinking about it, whatever. Then you go to number 4, which is really hated, and that's why you do it. They have to write an apology. Dear blank, I'm sorry I blankety blank. The reason I made a bad choice was this. Here's what I'll do next time. Do you accept my apology? So you can make forms that have little holes that kids put in words. You ask them if there's any word they need for a word bank, bless you, and you give them the words they need. They write the apology letter or the explanation letter. If, for example, you have a child in provoked aggression, right? You pushed me down, so I got up and pushed you down. Is that child also gets forward? You don't get away with physical aggression, even if you were aggressed on first. And sometimes you'll see verbal aggression is met by physical aggression. So that then becomes provoked physical aggression. So it's an apology letter or an explanation letter, and it's to everyone who was harmed. And who would be harmed? The teacher, because everything got disrupted. The paras, because that poor para got sentenced to boring condition as well. And be kind, so trade out who's the supervisor. When you are the para supervising the student in the boring time, you have to have your back turned to the kiddo, or at least sideways, and you can't do anything that might make them think reinforcing thoughts. So you can't be on your cell phone, because what? They would be thinking, well, I wonder if she's texting. I'm going to ask her. So you're not boring them enough. You literally have to take a mental vacation. This is time to practice your own mindful breathing. And then spell each other. And keep records of what they're doing at 5 or 10-minute intervals. You know, they're working on folder number 6, they're sleeping, whatever they're doing, keep a log. And we keep that in our classroom notebook so that we can do behavioral autopsies on what happened. Very quickly, when your program is running well, you don't get as many kids in reboot. And then up comes a new customer, and you're right back into rebooting again. So those of us who have done reboot, what are some of your comments about it or questions you have about it? So reboot experts, speak up.
I don't know if I'm an expert, but one thing that I did notice is that even when you're observing and taking notes, even if you're taking notes in front of them, they'll ask you, well, what are you writing down?
Right.
So it's important to make sure that you're just looking at the clock, very carefully so they don't see you. But not even taking notes in front of them is pretty important to that concern.
Thank you for adding that. That's absolutely true. Keep them bored. That's your goal. And you're bored. All humans hate boredom beyond all measure. So you are applying an aversive, but this is an ethical aversive. This is a moral aversive, and it's not fattening either. So in other words, there's no reason why this is a consequence you would use. What about a parent who says, oh, I really like your program, but I don't want my child to go through reboot? Then you're in the wrong program. When the child is in reboot, we let the parent know he's in reboot. The next day, if he didn't finish reboot, what happens? He goes back. But you don't greet him like Attila the Hun. What you do is you are glad he's back, and you celebrate he's back. Give him the high five and say, I bet you're going to be out of there soon. And if you're one of the parents who's supervising him, you say, come on, Philip, get us out of this. This is really boring. And get them to finish those folders. What if I have a treatment resistor? He's gone 2 weeks. You ever had a child go that long? You've had one go long? A couple of days. There's a kiddo in Nebraska I know who's had 3 2-week reboots. And that was a year ago. Now he hasn't had a reboot for a year. There are some kiddos who need extensive retraining. And they have to understand the system. So this is not a program for children with intellectual disabilities. This is a program for emotionally disturbed kiddos who've engaged in egregious manipulative behavior, who need to be able to control their internal selves, and they don't need only environmental controls to do it.
A little bit about how you creatively work through if you have multiple kids in reboot.
That is really a problem, isn't it? You've got 2 kids who need reboot. So I look at the phases in reboot, and I may slow down the getting calm part in order to get some kid out of these phases. I'm only boring them during the folders period. So it could be that I can get them out, I can get one kiddo out of folders and moving into the think about it phase, and do the think about it phase in a chair outside the classroom. So I have to be creative if I have 2 knuckleheads that are going at it simultaneously. So speak up, those of you who've had a boring time, who've had a reboot. What's gone right, what's gone wrong for you? Yeah.
If you have to move them, you have to have a really permanent reboot spot. We in the past did not. So if you any movement, we literally had to move from inside of a room, a conference room, or something into a conference room, and move right outside of it. And
They'll re-escalate.
It is completely gone.
Right.
I mean, you might as well just not move.
So administrators, listen up. If you want this program to work, and you want these children to become under behavioral control so that you can help them learn to cope, you've got to figure out the physical plant. Whether that's building something within the classroom or whether that's having something outside the classroom, you've got to deal with the physical plant in order to make it work. Any other thoughts or comments on reboot? Yes?
We had a circumstance where we had a room, it was very, very boring, except someone had forgotten and left a window pole up high window, and I was almost impaled by this window pole.
Yeah.
You have to really, really check the room. I mean, every single square inch, if it's in there, they'll find it. They go up a lot of times, and they'll find. So you have to go above eye level and see the whole
We
thing.
hope that they're calm before they go into phase 2. So,
But they don't always
but there are re-escalators. Sometimes kids will say, all right, bring it on. I'm ready for phase 2. Do it. And what do you know? They're not ready yet.
What happens when that escalates?
When they go in there and they re-escalate, you say to yourself, appropriately placed. And then you let the child know you're not yet calm. I think you need some time to de-escalate before we move into focus. and you outweigh them. It's all based on relationship, folks. If you don't have good relationships, you will not be able to help kids through this process. It's dependent on relationships. Yes? Right.
That's the entire issue. So we allow them to sleep.
Good idea.
And then when they wake up, you reassess.
Bingo. Here we are.
And then they go where usually they're able to write.
And that's why we do sleep logging, because we want our families to know, look, on the mood scaling we did, and you can use Incredible 5-point, have kids rate their own scaling. You can do a SUDS rating at the beginning of the day. The child's filling out how much sleep they got, and they're telling you at that time where their mood is. And then we do all this analysis of mood. And if we know that sleep is part of the issue, you can't shake them awake and say, do your photos. You'll just get escalation. They sleep, and we keep a log on it for how long they're sleeping. We let families know about this as well.
We noticed this past year that for our younger class, we do sleep logging for our
Right.
certain time in the morning. They all say they got there. all of them always slept for 12. Yeah,
106.
Great
I guess
way to
it's
sleep.
12.
all of them, none of them have any clue how long they sleep.
How young are you talking about?
Kindergarten through like, I think they're
One of the things you can do is ask them to tell you about their family routines. After I ate dinner, we did this, we did that, we did this. If they're unable to do that, most kindergartens can actually tell you what the TV program was they were watching. You know the TV schedule. And we have them color it in. We ask the families to tell the student, you're going to bed, it's 7:30 now. What time is it? 7:30. All right, remember that. Miss Wright's going to ask you tomorrow. So we try to do that. When all else fails, if you've got a kiddo who can't do it, make a phone call, and especially on a rugged day, and say, what time did he go to bed? And they'll lie too, but what time did he go to bed? And what time did he get up in the morning? Many of our families are so disorganized that kids go to sleep when they literally fall over. So part of what we do in our parent outreach is to talk about the physiology for learning. No parent wants an unsuccessful child. So they're just not getting the link. Well, no one in my family needs much sleep. I only sleep 4 hours a night. Good luck on that cortisol. So this is a problem. You're completely right. But let them sleep until they wake up. And look at the link between medication and sleep. Child's on a new medication and he can hardly lift his head up. You're continually gathering data. Who had another question or thought? Yes. Halfway
So we
through.
have to go to de-escalation.
Okay, so they re-escalate. With luck, you can get them in the de-escalation area, but sometimes you have to make a judgment call and leave them to flop around in the area you would normally do folders. You just outweigh them. Stand with your back to them, and you can do talking in the air, which is just simply, pretty soon you'll be calm. We really miss you in the classroom. Okay, well, if they're coming out escalated, do a behavioral autopsy. Did we put them in too soon? Ask yourself that question. And maybe they looked perfectly calm, but they're deciding to see if they can push all your buttons and they can get out of this consequence. So that's why you have to be Kentucky Fried Chicken. What is it? Kind, fair, firm, and consistent. If you decide that your 1-year-old needs to have a regular sleep time and that you aren't going in there to rescue them if they cry, and now you waited an hour and a half of high board screaming and you decide to rescue them out of that, what's the learning that occurs?
I figured out an app and you come in.
Yeah, and now you're worse off. And remember, our children have had rugged lives and have not had long, stable, kind, fair, firm, and consistent parenting on the whole. Although we do have children who have lovely parenting, but the genetic contribution is high. Okay, other questions on board?
Just add on to that. So if they do decide to re-escalate and forming another zero-out behavior, this has happened where they, say it's the third day that they're on folders, so they come in pretty calm, they're writing new folders, and they're like, no, you know what, I've been doing this for 3 days, I'm epic over this, and they run out and say punch a kid. Not the exact scenario, or they run out in the street. Do you go back and start folders over?
You stay with the maximum number of folders that they reach. So you can't ever get up to 37 folders, right? Because they keep doing different problems. So whatever the highest offense was, that's the number of folders.
So if they had done 6, 6, and they had 4 more because their original, it was originally because of unprovoked aggression, and then they another unprovoked aggression because they run out and hit the first person they see. They've already done 6. We go up to doing 10.
That's going to be a judgment call on who the kid is, and I certainly am going to load those last 4 folders with a whole lot of stuff in order to keep them compliant for a long enough period of time before they go in. But there are some kids that you may say, this is a lesson moment, and we need to go back to all the folders again, but I'm going to put just a little bit in each folder.
So you don't have the whole folder.
Right. Don't have a predetermined packed folder system, because you're going to vary it depending on what their behavior is. And what if I have a knucklehead, and remember I mean that affectionately. What if I have one who won't do any folders, and he's sleeping, and he's sitting and staring, and you can't make me do anything, and he outweighted you for 3 days. Now what?
Wait 5, wait 6.
You go to the next day, but as soon as he becomes compliant, he's already missed a lot. I'm going to have minimum amount in the folders. So the folders are the structure, and we vary the amount depending on how long we need to get them under instructional control. You can take one math problem and put it on a sheet, and that becomes content of the folder. So vary it skillfully. So take-home message on that. Okay? Question? Oh, yes.
With the apology component, is it necessary that it's written, or can it be like sincere and verbal, or just use like a post natural change?
Well, if they're opposed to writing things down, lead the horse to the water. Have a sentence completion one where I'm really sorry that I chose to, and they just have to put it in a word. But you want them to write something, because then when they go to deliver the apology, it's like a crib sheet. And you have a choice about when they do the apology. Do they do the apology right after they come out to make amends, or do you hold that apology until your self-governance meeting? And if you hold it until the self-governance meeting, all the steam will be out of the kiddo, and he's going to deliver the apology, and then we all say, I accept your apology. And those kids who say, I accept your apology, are going to get a bonus point for using that skill of accepting an apology. So you make a judgment call. Some kids have to get it off their chest. Other kids, it would be the wrong choice to force them to do it. Okay, can you discuss your thoughts on students who have a huge reaction to being in reboot? The students have been put in their room at home as punishment, and we think this reaction is a trauma reaction, but how to implement TIERS and take the overreaction out of the boring room. You let kids know by your signage of how you get out. This is your ticket out. This is your key, to getting out of the correction. It's not time-based grounding. It's folder-based rounding. And if I have a child who has been locked in his room or a closet, I'm going to be really sure that he's aware he can walk out at any time and there is no door. And I might even adjust those folders to have the minimus in it, not as much as I would normally have. The key here is you don't want them to be able to get honors room on any day they had a 0 out. That's the rule. No honors time when it's up. So I have to disrupt enough intervals with this process so that they can't earn 80%. So you have to kind of master the percentage pieces. Does that make sense? All right, let's finish up. So 0 out folders, I've given you some examples of what some people have done. You have to figure out your signage before the school doors open. The 4-step reboot system I wrote up there, it's on your PowerPoint. Boring time for a 0 out, there's no interval points you're earning and no bonus points you're earning. However, when you come out of boring time, let's say that you were pretty compliant. You can, during the think about it phase, give a bonus point for really knuckling down and getting all of your folders done rapidly. Does that make sense? Now, once they're out, they can't earn, no matter what they do, access to honors time. So at the end of each interval, you've got a problem. Because what difference does it make? It's not building to anything. So let them know that the points you earn when you've been in 0 out that won't go to honors time transfer over to bonus points. And then you can bonus point them as well to keep them compliant for the remainder of the day. Does that make sense? Okay. Relentless parent outreach. I'm not going to go over that. We all know what that means. And on your PowerPoint, it lists the various ways we do it. Paras and teachers, you need 15 to 20 minutes with an occasional administrator presence on the behavioral debriefing that you're doing. Leave some records in your class record book on what you talked about. And if you want to assign numbers to the kids or initials so it's not a great big non-confidential thing. And please encourage consistency and coordination. At the weekly level, we've got a teacher and support staff that are meeting together. Chances are your parents won't be available, and sometimes they can't be available because confidential things may need to be said from the mental health providers to the teacher based on a need-to-know basis. That's what we call it, a need-to-know. And it can't be something that the entire community finds out because it's so interesting we accidentally don't tell anybody. But here's what happens to us in education. You have to be careful. This is a time to review medication changes linked to performance, a need for less restrictive placements, and reviewing incoming data. You're always looking at graph data. So if I hold my meeting on a Thursday, I will have graphed everything from Friday to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to be able to review it. Self-governance meeting, I've given you a handout on how to do it, and that's what we do when we're in self-governance. The important part about self-governance is don't leave them in their chairs. They have to be vulnerable, which means they have to be in a circle with no protective furniture in front of them. Because it's too easy if they're sitting at their desk to yell out stuff and not be in that emotional learning mode. LRE is important, and so the primary curricula, if anyone asks you, what is the curricula that causes recovery, that's what you tell them. It's social emotional skills, social skills, stress management, apology and compliment, intensified PBIS, and then a bonus for those of us who are advanced at this is we're going to be working on student agency And I talked about WOOP, W-O-O-P, which is how we get intrinsic motivation. So how am I going to deliver all this instruction? Here's an example of how to deliver the specially designed instruction. On Monday, you might teach the social skills curriculum and then reference it all week. On Tuesday, social emotional learning, reference it all week. Wednesday, stress management curriculum, wind up or learning to breathe. Thursday, your PBIS lesson, and on Friday, a self-management lesson if you're moving into WOOP, or it may be that that's when you do your self-governance meeting, and we do the brain breaks across all of the days. So no child should be on the books of the restrictive placement who isn't getting 1 period a day of specially designed instruction. If they can survive continuously out in the world, they don't belong in your class. And by the way, you don't send a para glued to the side of the kid who's integrated in Gen Ed. Why? Who are we kidding that that's a general ed placement if I've stapled an aid on your child? Now, I have my paras go to collect data on what's happening in that classroom. Is he understanding the work? Is the teacher giving him as much reinforcement as everyone else? And I'm there to help that teacher if there's a difficult lesson. So then the teacher can say, hey, we're going to cover photosynthesis tomorrow, and I need extra support. And because she has the child from our program in the class, she's eligible to have the para come in to support everyone. Does that make sense? It's not inclusion to staple an aid on the side, and we don't have enough aids to send them out with compliant kids who are doing what they're supposed to be doing and then leaving the fort unmanned for the kiddos who are not doing well. I want to mention for those of us who are administrators, what's your role in this program? Your role in this programming is to check for fidelity. And you have the airplane, and we have the list of the 14 core components. How's it going? Drop in on the weekly meeting. How's it going? What's the graphs on the kids and their response rate? And remember to be incredibly reinforcing to the staff who have chosen to work with the most difficult kids. Well, do I need to suspend them when they do things like whack somebody else in the head? That's a question that always comes up. There are some suspensions that have to occur. What are they? Weapons, drugs. Okay? If we were to suspend for all of the kinds of things that kids get suspended for, with these kiddos with emotional disturbance, we're going to go over 10 days of suspension in a heartbeat. And once you get over 10 days of suspension, what happens? You have a manifestation determination. Is a problem behavior by a child who's coded emotionally disturbed related to his disability? Yes or no? Well, yeah. So now you've triggered what? A functional behavioral assessment. So now you're taking staff time to come and analyze and produce paperwork on why he did the behavior, to get something or get rid of something. And then you've sentenced them to a development of an individual behavior. So drain the swamp. Don't suspend when you don't need to. Here's an example from Santa Barbara. There was a high school kid who was in the program in Debbie's class, and she went out and got drunk before school with 2 non-disabled peers. And the 3 of them came to school completely wasted. And the administrator assigned all the kids to in-school suspension, which is known as the breakfast club. Have you seen the movie? And she knew that if, the teacher knew that if this child who got drunk with non-disabled peers went to in-school suspension with the other 2, that this behavior would occur more and more frequently because this child would use this in order to get in good with the other kids. So this kid got sentenced to reboot. And she spent 2 days in reboot because we fluffed up the folders and did all that. And by the time she got out, she said, no way am I ever getting bugged again because I really don't like reboot. So administrators, think twice before you go down the suspension route because it doesn't actually change behavior. What I'd like us to do for 2 minutes is talk right now with the people around you. What are your 3 next steps that you want to do to prepare for kids walking through the door? Come up with 3 of them. Is it making signs? What is it? Here's what I would do if I were coming up with 3 things. First, I would make a classroom notebook and individual notebooks if I'm going to do the paper system. And I would print out the point sheets to have those ready. So that would be my first prep. Then I would make sure that my scheduling allows me to do specially designed instruction, and I would put in orders if I don't have all the curriculum that we're talking about. And I would make signs to put up in the classroom that will describe the program because we have to explain this to our kids. But most important is believe you can do it. If you need help, there are lots of people in the county who can help you out by explaining things. And if the push comes to shove, you can always get a hold of me. I'm not 911, but I do always respond. It might take me 24 hours, and it might not be exactly when you wanted to hear from me. It might be 7 o'clock at night. It depends on what we're both doing. And I want to thank you for all you do to work with these kids whose behaviors are challenging to adults, peers, and even to the children themselves. Thank you for your commitment.